Hi, my name is Frederic Miskawi. I'm a student in the CSCA 5622 course, and this is my final project. I'm also a vice president at a company called CGI consulting firm, and I lead our applied AI solutions globally. And today's project that I'm presenting to you is specifically related to wine and wine ratings. I'm originally from France, which could explain the accent that you might be hearing. And everyone here in the US, I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia. Everyone in the US that I encounter kind of expects me to know wine. Just for the simple fact that I'm originally from France. And I do not know wine. I drink wine once in a while. I'm not really into wine. But I figured this might be a good time to start looking into the underlying data and understand wine. So I'm also part of another group. We've been meeting for 2 years. We meet once a week to talk about different AI topics. And the topic of wine and the ability to predict wines came up. So I decided to write this particular final project on that topic. And I wanted to use the different models that we covered during the class. And so as part of preparing for this project, based on this particular goal that I had, I looked up different types of data sources. I found one particular data source in Kaggle that was interesting, over 130,000 different wine reviews. And I was thinking this would be the great way to kind of get my feet wet in this world of wine. So I took a look at the data. I looked at the entry. I also looked at other different data sets online to see if there would be other potential good data sets. I found others, but I settled on this one because the number of wine reviews, the data didn't seem too dirty. There weren't too many holes in it. Although, as we'll see as we're going through this particular project, there were many different holes on the data set. But this was a good place to start. In the project itself, I described exactly where I got the data set, and the author of the data set is also listed here, so you'll have a chance to dig into that. So for this particular video, what I'm doing is I'm going to be covering this particular document. This is the PDF version. I also have a notebook. All that is in GitHub, and I've been working on this for some time, and unfortunately this document is over 115 pages long. It's a little long, but I covered each of the various aspects I think that we needed to cover in this project. I wanted to go deep. I wanted to understand the data. So I'll cover that. I'll cover the highlights, and then talk about these findings that you're seeing here in the executive summary. So overall, the project is showing that there are correlations between the various predictors within the data set, that price and points are very much connected to each other. And so if you want to predict points, you use price. If you want to predict price, you use points. And what that tells me ultimately, especially after doing a little bit of research on wines, since I didn't know too much, was the nature of reviews are coming from blind tasting. So people get together as part of organized events. They blind test the wine, and they rate the wine. They describe the wine, and that's where the scoring is coming from. This particular data set came from a previous version of a website called Wine Enthusiast, and so all the data is coming from that prior incarnation of Wine Enthusiast, and they only rate wines above the score of 80. So if any wine has a score below 80, they don't put it on the website. So that's why that particular data set of 130,000 wines only has wines above a score of 80. So I looked at this. I wanted to do two key things in the data set, one on the regression side and one on the classification side. And again, it's because of our project on our courses and the modules that we had in the course. For regression, I tested different models. I'll cover that briefly, but The winner of the model is gradient boosting. For classification, the winner is random forest. And I go deep into the why and the results, like graph everything. I don't really have time to cover all this in this video, but just to give you a highlight of what's included in this 115 pages document. At the end, it's not just that there's a correlation between price and scoring, but we also see that winery makes a difference. And I've got all that in a table. I can show exactly the predictors and the percentage of impact on the prediction and the winery. So the location, and because winery they tend to be in particular very specific geographical locations worldwide, there's also correlation on the prediction with location, regions, country, and all that is also in the data. The one thing that I thought I was going to see, but I did not see, is correlation with year. So in the data set, in the title, was the year for the wine. So I took that out as part of the data cleanup. I created a new column for year. And as part of the modeling, what I found is that year does not really influence the scores. And as a matter of fact, there's an inverse relationship, my apologies. There's an inverse relationship between the year and the likely score. And what that means is that most wines don't age well, and you're better off with a wine that was produced in the past 5 to 10 years max. Anything older than that, and you see the scoring on those wines starting to go down. And so that's part of what I saw in the data. And there are exceptions. So for example, very particular wineries for a very specific year have a great year, but there's no connection between that year, that winery, and wineries around it. And what that tells me is that, in some cases, grapes are growing great, less pests, and they're able to take good use of the weather and the earth. And as they're growing that, and as they're processing the wine during vendange, the process that they're going through, the experience that they have in creating that wine, for that year, combined with the terroir, the wine quality and what's happening in that particular location on the earth, is causing the wine to have this appeal. And we don't see a lot of that in the data. And that's probably the nature of the data that was collected for these reviews. So we're going to take the word of the reviewers at face value. And a lot of what we found is that, for example, on classification, what I found is that if you pass in with this model that I settled on, if you pass in enough wines, the ones that it tells you are must-buys are likely going to be a great choice for you. So we ended up with two models that are providing very useful type of output of prediction, not highly accurate. And this certainly, when we talk about recall, we talk about precision, can definitely be improved. But they're still useful. And that's all that in the document. You can see it in the conclusion. I'm going to cover really shortly, since we have about a minute left in this video. I just want to cover the table of content to give you an idea of what's happening in this document. We've got the problem statement, the hypotheses. I had some initial thought on the topic, which, as you'll see, some of the hypotheses were actually proven wrong. And I've explained that in the conclusion, so you can go into those details. Data source provenance, data cleaning, and EDA. I probably spent, well, 2/3 of my time on these sections. Data engineering is where you're spending your time. I found modeling very quick. I was able to get the right models from Sci-Fi Kit, a science kit, and I was able to get exactly what I needed pretty quickly. All the documentation was clear. So all that was actually pretty quick, but I spent well over 2/3 of my time just in cleaning and getting the data ready, coming back, doing some more cleaning, because I realized I'd made mistakes, for example. So all that is explained in there. You can follow it like a book. So even though it's 115 pages, you're able to actually see what's happening and understand it across this particular document. I go into the conclusion, and there's one particular interesting section for me, which is I tend to talk a lot about the future. And section 7.4 includes future considerations, enhancements, and research. This was a massive amount of work. It was totally worth it. I learned a great deal, but there's so much more that we can do with this. As an example, and I'll leave it there, one thing that I found is that the title and the description of the wine includes a lot of really key words that likely are predictors of the score and how reviewers are appreciating the wine. Since we didn't really cover natural language processing in this course, I did not include in this project, but I'm hoping to build on this and to build more models, to build and go deeper into unsupervised modeling, to be able to leverage title and description. So a lot more can be done. This was a lot of fun. And at the end, we got 2 useful models. So this was well worth it. Thank you everyone for watching. And I look forward to reviewing your content as well as your projects. And I'll see you in the next class. Thanks everyone.